Greetings, fellow travelpreneurs, and welcome to another episode of the Travelpreneur Club, where I interview inspiring travelpreneurs from around the world and share with you their story of starting, launching, and growing their own location-independent business. Now let's get started. Today I feel honored to have Tim Fargo with us. Tim is a lifelong entrepreneur, investor, author, and keynote speaker. In 1991, Tim went bankrupt, but 12 years later, he had grown his insurance fraud investigation company to a $20 million sale, which he highlights in his book, Alphabet Success. After the sale of the company, Tim has gone to invest in companies, author books, and speak at large events. He has since launched a social media content management system with SocialJukebox, which allows users to maximize their time spent writing and publishing content. Tim, welcome to the Travelpreneur Club, my friend.
Hey, Drew. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So tell us a little more about yourself and fill in any details that I may have missed.
Wow. Well, I'm a father of 16-year-old triplets, so that's probably among the larger challenges I have in my life. It's and lots of variables that are very very hard to control. And as you sort of pointed out, in my current iteration of life, I have this business, SocialJukebox, which I think is kind of a point of connection to you and your audience. And I think what's interesting is, the first business I had was not location independent. I had a lot of employees. I had a very large office. And of course, I was an entrepreneur, and that was great. I enjoyed it. But in this second iteration, I just want to kind of get on record. I was very deliberate in picking something that I could travel, that I could be moving around and not be in one spot. And I think, those opportunities do avail themselves, but, sometimes it's kind of like you have to be very deliberate about how you're proceeding so you don't paint yourself into the proverbial corner.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you kind of have an idea already what a travelpreneur is. But I'd like to give you our definition. So a travelpreneur is a traveling entrepreneur that believes in building location-independent businesses that allow them complete control and freedom over their lifestyle. So you already mentioned it a little bit, but Tim, what do you do exactly that makes you part of the Travelpreneur Club?
Well, I think the biggest thing, SocialJukebox is a SaaS business, software as a service, and what we do is we help people by automating their posts to Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So it's a business that helps people, and actually, it's there's a little bit of a meta thing here too, because using the tool also allows you to be somewhat independent of locations. So if you're on the move, your social media accounts are still being updated and look alive, so to speak, as opposed to like awaiting you arriving at the next location and updating them. But I'm definitely on the go. This year, we started January 1st. I was with my kids and we were in Swaziland. And then we went back from Swaziland to South Africa. And then after we left South Africa, my kids went back to Sweden. And then I was back in Poland. So I think this year alone, I think I've been in 22 different countries. Wow. So I don't know if I get a gold star in the Travelpreneur Club, but I'd like to think at least, I'm on the list. I'm not going to be like thrown out of the club.
No, absolutely. I think you're definitely up there. So kind of take us to your initial start. What made you take the leap into working for yourself, whether it be your initial business for the insurance fraud investigation, or if you want to kind of talk about the initial SocialJukebox, your location dependent start. But kind of take us to the beginning.
Well, what I'm going to do? I'm going to kind of jump back to when I was just like, when I first got the itch, like I wanted to do something myself, which is a long time ago. And part of that was just my dad was a really hard ask. If you wanted money and you went to my dad, the process was very arduous, and it was actually easier to go do something and work and just get the money that way than to kind of listen to the editorial that kind of came with the cash. Mm-hmm. And I think I had the drive to do it anyway. But from the time I was a teenager, I had like odd jobs and a paper route and a lot of the traditional snow shoveling. and things like that. So I definitely had that in my head, and that was the first driver. And then, I think later on, like what predated the first business or the most notable business, Omega, which is the one I sold. That part of that was, I was working in other places and I was seeing people who were pretty successful, and it kind of dawned on me, like after interacting with some of them, that this person is not Einstein, and it's actually, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. I think people should definitely realize that to make it it's not required to be like some kind of brain trust. I think actually sometimes people that are super bright get themselves into more trouble because they overthink things and over-engineer things instead of just keeping things really simple. But anyhow, so I got started that way, and I realized, like, hey, I had to give this a shot, and that was kind of the initial piece of just I had started working with some other guys. I was their finance and systems guy in the business right before Omega. And that's what I started out as, right? So then they added, hey, you're now also in charge of operations. Hey, you're also now in charge of marketing. You're also going to oversee the sales staff. So I started looking at the organizational chart, and I was like, there's not a whole lot of this thing that's like not under me. So I was already kind of running the business anyway. And then I just said, I tried to actually, I really tried to make it work with those guys. But they seemed pretty like married to the idea that I was going to be working for them instead of just them letting me loose. So when that wouldn't happen, I just said, you know what, I'm doing this myself anyhow, so I might as well reap all the benefits.
Absolutely. So most people have trouble getting started on their own. They're afraid to take that leap into working for themselves. They have either a house mortgage or a car payment, children. They really struggle to make that transition to working for themselves because they have so much that they have to is relying on them. So what do you believe is the greatest factor holding most people back from taking control of their lives and making the necessary change?
I think you just have to invest yourself in the idea, and let's be honest about it. The starting part is unquestionably daunting because you've got to build a little bit of infrastructure under yourself. I mean, and that's really probably the piece of business is maybe the hardest to get your head around. Is like, I mean, you got to have demand, of course, and then you've got to have a pretty good set of like, what am I going to do every day? Like, people are asking me to do something, and then how do I facilitate getting that done, right? But in terms of risk, it's not, I mean, unless you're in a kind of unique business. I mean, like with SocialJukebox, I mean, as of this morning, I have 1,514 paying clients. Now, I'm probably not going to wake up tomorrow with 5,000 clients, but I'm probably also not going to wake up tomorrow with none. So the risk is actually, unless I do something really goofy, which I'm at least not planning on, it's the risk is actually pretty low. So once you get past that initial build and you have some infrastructure, so for me, and going back to your question, I think that's probably the hardest part. And I building where am I going to get my money from? How am I going to, where's my market? And then how am I going to get the work done? But that's actually, I mean, that's all really any company ever has, is they have an infrastructure. So you either build one for yourself, which is a little bit of work, but not actually, I don't think, as much as a lot of people think. Or you go plug yourself in, you're either going to build one for yourself or you're going to go plug yourself into someone else's. But the cost to you as an individual is a lot higher when you plug yourself into someone else's, because you will not reap the same level of rewards. And you end up ultimately, even if that business has millions of clients, you only have one, and that's whoever you're working for. And to me, that's, kind of like there's a little bit of a portfolio element there. I mean, as long as everything's great with that one client, well, that's, hallelujah. But as a lot of people discover, things can change, and it doesn't even always have to make sense why a company will get rid of a division or close it or whatever. So anyhow, I think I think that's the biggest piece. Like, and I think people over imagine that there's this amazing amount of work to get stuff done, when actually in the beginning, like when I started Omega, I mean, we didn't have a logo, we didn't have a brochure, none of that stuff. You know, a lot of the things that people would say, well, you better have all that stuff before you get started. You know, I mean, what you need is you need someone who will pay you to do whatever it is you're planning on doing. Once you have that, and you know, and you send out an invoice and you get paid, I mean, you're in business. You know, it's not.
So we lost connection there, but you're talking about you know, working for yourself and the transition of, you know, taking ownership and, you know, taking the chance and, you know, reaping the benefits because you're putting in the work and you're taking all the risk. So what do you believe has been the greatest factor that you attribute to your success thus far?
I would say, and this might sound a little odd, I would say it's being a little bit lazy. And I say that because I think, as I mentioned a little earlier, it's very easy to over engineer a business or start doing a lot of other things, because you get successful in one thing and you go, oh my gosh, you know, I'll do 20 other things. It's a lot easier to pick one thing, be really good at that, and just hammer away. And some people would call it discipline. In my case, it's more work than I really want to do go do a bunch of other stuff. I'd rather keep improving on the one thing than go out and chase down 20 others. So I can't kind of overstate the value of not chasing after a bunch of different stuff. And that's a real common problem for a lot of new entrepreneurs, is like they're so anxious to get revenue, so they end up like a mile wide and an inch deep. They don't really have a niche. And they're terrified of niches because they think, oh, you know, I won't get enough business. But it may take a little bit longer to build your initial demand, but it's a lot easier to operate in a niche than have to reinvent yourself every morning. So I think staying narrow, and really, I mean, the easier you can make the operation of your business, the more likely you are to be successful.
Absolutely. And actually, there's a good acronym that I really like that I believe I heard from John Lee Dumas, one of my favorite podcasters, is FOCUS. Follow one course until success. You know, just really staying lasered in on one goal. Like you said, follow your niche and just be the authority dominant figure in that niche. And then from there, the business will grow.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of go back to your early start and, you know, when you actually went bankrupt. You know, I actually, this is a popular theme among successful entrepreneurs, is, you know, they take risks and sometimes those things don't work out quite the way you planned. You know, take us to that moment, you know, when you were faced with the feeling of bankruptcy. Like, take us to that moment. How did you feel and how did you overcome that challenge?
Well, I mean, probably more than anything, I just felt pretty stupid. Because, you know, I mean, but I guess part of what has made me successful is also what made me bankrupt, because I was really, really optimistic, and I kept believing that things were going to turn themselves around, and probably was a little too optimistic back then, and should have like trimmed the sails a little bit, cut expenses a little bit. And I just kept thinking, oh, everything's going to, you know, we're going to rock it, you know, and like the blue sky is just around the corner. And instead I just rammed right into the mountain. So, I mean, that to me, like the optimism is really a critical piece of being an entrepreneur, I think, because you inevitably, I mean, like I've had kind of an interesting day today of just things not going exactly the way I wanted. And you just have to realize, like, you know, that you're going to have a few of those. So you got to be able and willing to kind of get past it. And the same thing with the bankruptcy. I think that sometimes people make a mistake, which that definitely is. I mean, you know, you're not supposed to go bankrupt. It shouldn't be in your business plan. But at the same time, you can't let that define you. You know, you can't let the fact that you screwed something up, and I did screw up, right? I mean, you can candy coat it and do all the little failure romance you want. It was a mistake. Having said that, you know, there's some lessons in there. Take the lessons out, throw the rest of it away, and keep moving. And I think sometimes people go, it'd be a temptation to say, oh my God, well, I tried, but I went bankrupt. I can't do this. I mean, it's usually not a case of you can't do it. Clearly something went wrong. You need to just kind of like look through the wreckage, find kind of like the cause of, the catastrophe or the problem, and then use that data to go back and do it again better the next time. And most failure is not fatal, so you have a chance to redo it. And so anyhow, I think that that's kind of that was the process for me. I mean, it happened. It was unpleasant, and but I think you either take things that happen like that and you turn them into something positive, which is what you're going to have to do if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, or you can just say, well, I tried that, it didn't work. But I mean, when you tried to walk when you were a baby, trust me, I've got 3 kids. You fell a lot. And eventually, falling hurts. So that's a great feedback mechanism. And you eventually, almost everybody in the world knows how to walk. And it's just but it's interesting. Actually, I'll make a little bit of a metaphor there. But people do it because they expect to be able to do it, right? I mean, nobody would go, well, they're having trouble walking, so I'm really not going to push them. I'm not going to push my kid to learn how to walk. And plus, there's like kind of the social proof other people are doing it. But so for a lot of people, I think, I mean, if you look around at like how people manage their lives, I mean, a lot of people manage to just do enough to get by. But that's probably just, kind of their own expectation set, right? I mean, how is it magically, like through some alchemy of the universe, that they happen to show up with enough money every month to just pay their bills? They just skate by. So if they set the bar twice as high and just said, that's what I have to do, I think they could actually do it. But a lot of people just set the bar in a certain place. And I think, you've got to be willing to set the bar higher. And, and even if you go bankrupt, you can't go, well, my new challenge is not to go bankrupt again. You've got to redefine like how you're going to look at your life is kind of my point.
Absolutely. So I kind of want to briefly touch about on your book, Alphabet Success. So it's keeping it simple, your secrets to success. So if there's one thing that an aspiring travelpreneur or entrepreneur can take from that book, what would it be?
I would say JKL is probably my favorite, which is because the book is a series of acronyms, as you probably know, and each of them is a little bit of a different lesson. So JKL is just keep looking. And I think that very often, we'll try things and it doesn't even have to end in bankruptcy, but, you'll go, I have this idea, and you run it by a few people and, and nobody, it doesn't resonate for whatever reason. But that isn't necessarily a reason to abandon the idea. Maybe it's a reason to rethink the presentation of the idea, or rethink, maybe it needs to be more niche focused or whatever. So, but just keep looking just applies to so many areas where, you need another client, so you have to just keep looking. And I mean, I think that kind of the persistence and perseverance is like massive, in making it, because with, of course there's the headline exceptions where, they tried it and through whatever they managed to become super successful, but that's not the norm. So being willing to weather the storm. So JKL is definitely that's the key, because even when it doesn't look great, just try to find the embers that are like providing a little bit of fire, and focus on building on that until you got something going.
So, you've accomplished a lot in your life. Now you have this new project, Social Jukebox. What is your number one goal for this new year, and how do you plan to accomplish it?
Well, my initial goal is to just make sure that we have a successful execution on the multi-platform product, which isn't much of a goal per se, but it's interesting. I I do want to reach. I do want it to be $1 million like single person business, and I know that like for a lot of people probably sounds like insane, um, but I'm not. It's going to sound like there's going to be people like, wow, that doesn't sound very. I'm making pretty nice money out of this business already, right? With the 1,500 clients I mentioned previously, and I'm more focused now on the product than I am on building a particular like financial number because I think in time, like every time I seem to iterate and come out with some new features and give people something positive to talk about, we get more clients in the door.
Absolutely.
So I'm staying a little bit more product focused. And I mean, when I compare this experience, and I mind you, for your audience, I mean, I have the luxury of, I also have the money in the bank from the business I sold, and that doesn't hurt. But I actually really like the idea of it's already very sustainable. If all I did is keep the clients I have and keep them happy, I have a great relationship with them. I enjoy what I do every day. And there's something to be said for that. I know that a lot of people really want the big cash out. But for me, it's more, I just want to have a really great product and have people love it, and kind of grow it that way. I've never approached anything like this before, but it reminds me of a transition I made with exercise, because when I was younger, I used to do a lot of running races, and it was fun, but it became kind of a job, where, and I mean a job in kind of the worst sense of the word. Where it's like, oh, I got to go to the track and do speed work. Oh, I got to go take care of this. Oh, I got to do my Sunday. I got to do my long run. And after a while, I was like, this isn't fun anymore. This isn't the reason that I started running in the beginning. I started running just for exercise and because I really enjoyed it. And I'm kind of going through the same transition business-wise. I'm a little older maybe than some of your audience, but for me, like the idea that if I can make a nice living and enjoy what I'm doing, I mean, that's two absolutely massive things. And also having like your audience is after, and I was after, and the ability to be geographically independent along the way. That's so. I mean, if it doesn't turn into something that ends up on the front of the Wall Street Journal, I really don't care.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a big goal of mine. And honestly, if someone handed me $1 billion, I really don't know what I would do with it, other than I mean, no, but I don't have those interests. I don't want to have 100-foot yacht, or I don't want to have a helicopter. I don't really care about that stuff.
Sure.
I like hanging out at the beach with my kids and going for a swim and going for a walk or a run. And I'm pretty chill with that stuff.
Absolutely.
So
What more could you ask for? I mean, that sounds like a great life right there.
yeah, man, as long as you're healthy and moving, it's
That's all
good.
that matters. So the Travelpreneur Club is made up of both aspiring and established travelpreneurs. So other than your own, what is one of your favorite books that you would really believe would resonate with the audience?
Wow, that's a great question. I mean, I probably the book that comes to mind, but it's maybe a little overdone for your audience, would be The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss.
Excellent.
It's kind of the Bible of the travelpreneur. But I would say the book, and I'll say this just because to me it's probably the most influential book that I've ever read,
Sure.
and it's also pretty popular. It's Influence by Cialdini, The Psychology of Persuasion,
Okay.
that gets into social proof and the rule of reciprocity. And it's not a travel entrepreneur book per se, but it's such a series of fundamental lessons about marketing and persuasion. Though knowing those things, they will serve you. I mean, forget about your entrepreneurial life. They will serve you in life, in understanding how other businesses work, how to make your business better. Um, there, there's no downside on that book. It's all the best thing that ever happened in my business career is reading that book.
Oh, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, so I'll definitely have to link that up in the show notes. I haven't heard of that one yet, so I will definitely have to check that out as well. So I just want to say thank you again, Tim, for taking the time to talk with me today. I believe you delivered a lot of value. So my fellow travelpreneurs, I highly recommend heading over to alphabetsuccess.com. You can read a little more about Tim's personal journey, some valuable insights, and you can also pick up a copy of his book on Amazon, which is linked on there. Also, feel free to check out SocialJukebox.com if you're interested in automating your content distribution. I know Tim's working on some pretty impressive things right now, and he's really looking to grow that platform, so we're excited to see where that goes. So Tim, before we let you go, if you could share with us one parting piece of wisdom and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
I'm going to go right back to the JKL. Just don't give up, man. I mean, if you're listening to this show and you're thinking, well, they did it, but maybe it's not for me. Look, most of what makes the difference between one person and the next is just making the decision. And you just have to make that decision and then stick with it. And it might not happen for you in a year, it might not happen in 2, but if you stay after it, if you just keep looking, you'll get it. So I'm sorry to double down on that one piece of advice, but I think it's an important one. And in terms of finding me or reaching me, on Twitter I am at Alphabet Success. That's my handle. And then in terms of reaching me, obviously I'd love it if you went to SocialJukebox.com. And if you'd like to reach out to me, my email address is not completely up to date yet, but it's tim@tweetjukebox. And so if you have a question or a comment or just whatever, you've got something you want to ask about, on your journey, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Tim, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Drew. Thank you. I appreciate it. And have fun in Colombia, man.
Hey, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching today's episode. It would mean the world to me if you would subscribe below and share this video with a friend that you think it would help. If you'd like this interview in audio format, you can click above right there to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher. And don't forget to head on over to thetravelpreneurclub.com for more inspirational content that'll help you begin your journey as a travelpreneur. Until next time, take care, my friends.